there's another Saw movie happening. They're trying again. It feels like every couple of years they have to sort of try to revive this whole thing to figure it all out. But at least it seems like this one is connected to the original series in a more tangible way. But I figured it would be a good time to go back to the well and check out some more Saw ripoff films, since there's like 7,000 of them. So let's dive in and see if they feel more like a Jigsaw adventure than, say, Spiral. Number 10. We'll start this off with a little number called Headgame from 2018, which starts in a locked room with someone struggling and some death, which is already giving some Saw vibes. It begins with Jackie here going on a date.
So what do you say? Are you game?
Oh, you don't like you don't see where this is going. We meet our players, and it's a group of young, pretty people who are all top-level athletes, and for the most part, dicks. And very quickly, things go the way that you expect them to, as our group is drugged, and then all 8 of them wake up in an abandoned warehouse with something in their head and a voice talking to them.
This is a game.
They're told that only one of them can win the game, and the thing in their head is a camera, and they're not allowed to block them, or they get shocked. When one yanks it off his head, his entire face melts because there's acid in it. After 12 hours, the vial of acid will degrade and kill them all unless they play the game and the winner can have it removed. Although, couldn't they just, lean forward and pull it down? The only reason the acid splashed on his head is because he just pulled it, but just, tilt your head down and pull forward. You may get a bit of acid on you, but it's not like it would splash all over. Besides, that small of an amount on your face likely wouldn't kill you anyhow. It would just give you severe burns. As opposed to Jigsaw, this is a bunch of rich folk betting on who will win, and they're given a machete in a box, which is used to kill Anton, but oops, it slides down a bit. So yeah, I think we know how that effect was achieved. They're given clues on how to get out, navigating death traps, while they start to scheme against each other as well. And this one was by a guy named Stephen Judd, and he directed a couple of other things, but mostly shorts, and one other horror film called Death Factory. And this one feels very Saw-ish, but I guess also a touch of Escape Room in a way. But it has the weird quirk of ending, but then basically still going on for 20 more minutes with extra plot, but it makes sure to end with a very Jigsaw game over kind of moment. Number 9. Here's one that's a bit more star-studded than most, and it's 2006's Unknown. And this was just a couple of years after the first Saw came out, and the ripoffs were fast and furious. And stop me if you've heard this one before. A bunch of people wake up in an abandoned warehouse, and they're locked in, and there's a bloody body in the middle of the floor. And oh yeah, at least 2 are handcuffed to the walls. So you might think that you wandered into another Jigsaw entry and are looking for a weird puppet on a tricycle, but instead you're getting Crazy Jesus, and he doesn't remember who he is, and gets a mysterious phone call that seems to insinuate that a crime went down. Bridget Moynihan is here too, as is Chris Mulkey, not taken over by an alien that wants to be president. One of the men in the room is Teddy, and he's the one with memory issues this time around. And then Lucky Ned Pepper is here too, as is Captain Amazing, and the object of May's affection. But no one remembers anything, so they're trying to figure out exactly what happened and what they're there for. And man, would I like to know what went on behind the scenes here, because this was a debut feature film for Simon Brand, who did a ton of music videos before this, including ones for Enrique Iglesias and Jessica Simpson, but never did a narrative feature before. But I guess managed to make his debut here with a $4 million budget and a laundry list of known stars who I assume were working for scale here. And it's far less of a horror film, and it's really like a crime drama, and one that eventually reunites Joey Pants and Mark Boone Jr. And then Satan himself shows up, and yeah, after the initial setup, it's not very Saw-oriented. It goes completely its own way. But let's face it, that whole beginning is just straight up someone watched Saw and said, what if we did that same thing, but just went in a different direction? But then, just when you think it's only the setup that's inspired from it, it ends with a whole, here's a series of flashbacks to explain what was going on the entire time. Number 8. Okay, here's a weird one, but now we're checking out 2019's To Your Last Death. Right away we can see that it's an animated film, but like that weird limited animation, like not as extreme as the Marvel superheroes from the 60s with that Captain America throws his mighty shield theme song. And side note, I'm going to read the lyrics to that Hulk theme song because they're hilarious.
Dark Bruce Banner, belted by gamma rays, turned into the Hulk.
Ain't he on glamour rays?
Doc Bruce Banner, belted by gamma rays, turns into the Hulk. Ain't he unglamorous? Rays? Yes, not only is Hulk called unglamorous, but it's stylized into unglamorous rays because the 60s knew how to make an iconic theme song. Anyway, this movie starts with some narration by the Shat himself. Not that he shat himself, but like William Shatner himself, known as the Shat. And we have Miriam here, sole survivor of a brutal ordeal, and it flashes back a few days. Miriam's family is intense, and her dad is a psycho, and he's also Leon Nash. At a family meeting, he announces that he's dying, and also has his men pull guns on them for being disappointments. He then has them all killed, but Miriam manages to make it out. But then, in the hospital, she's approached by the mysterious Game Master, voiced by Morena Baccarin, and she tells her that she's playing a game and sends Miriam back in time to do it all again. She's sent back to the beginning of her father's speech, and yeah, so far this doesn't sound a whole lot like Saw, but then here we go. Cyrus places his children into complicated death traps that they then have to try to survive. Like, throw in the fact that you have a Game Master character forcing her to play the game, and you see why this is on here. Like, his one daughter is a cutter, so he puts her in a machine with a timer, and she has to keep cutting herself until she fills a bottle with a certain amount of blood, or else it chops her head off. So like, yeah, like Saw. And this is from Jason Axon, who did some work in TV animation, but this was his first animated feature film, and he'd go on to do that whole Night of the Animated Dead thing, and the style of animation here is about the same as that, and it's decent. It gets a bit monotonous at times, and just like Headgame, it seems to find an ending, and then just sort of continue on for a while. Number 7. Here's another one from 2006, which was pretty much like golden hour for Saw clones, and it's this one called Gag. Right from the get-go, they're shouting what they are, since it has a woman strapped into a chair, killed with a contraption that forces a rat into her mouth. We then have a couple of cat burglars, and at what point do you graduate from being like a common burglar to being like a full-fledged cat burglar? Is there some sort of hierarchy that you have to go through for that? But then here's where things get a bit familiar, because when they find the room with the safe that they're after, they also find a dude strapped down to a bed with a gag in his mouth. And before they can rescue him, they're knocked out. And then they're chained up to the wall, held captive by a crazy man that comes down to torture them. But, of course, we find out that things aren't what they seem, and the identities are soon revealed, and elaborate torture designs are soon implemented, including yet another tube down into someone's mouth, which seems to be a theme here. And this one is directed by Scott W. McKinley, and it was his directorial debut. And he would go on to do only one film after this one. And he did some work with Trauma over the years, and like Unknown, this one plays out like a little more like a crime drama than a horror movie. And the whole thing takes place in one location, has torture involved, and a whole lot of people handcuffed to pipes in the walls. So I'm going to go ahead and call it a Saw ripoff. It's not overly terrible or anything, but it does get a bit dull and monotonous as it goes on, and people just continually make really, really terrible decisions. Number 6. Our next entry is from that same time period, but from 2007, and it's from Germany with Steel Trap. And I'm telling you, that title alone is pretty obvious, right? It's set on New Year's Eve, at least I assume it is, because they're singing Auld Lang Syne, and I think if you sing that song at any other time of the year, you get fined like $3,000. And a group of people at this super elite party get a random text to sneak down to a private party on an abandoned floor, and there's name cards with personalized messages there. But it soon becomes apparent that there's a game involved with clues laying about. Things get dark rather quickly, and someone is there and starts killing them with a hook. They realize that foul deeds are afoot and try to escape, but the elevator is a trap, and they're forced to navigate the killer's hidden game while also discovering each other's secrets. I mean, you know, a Saw movie. Everyone is way more annoying than usual and just bicker the entire time. And like, there's even a point in the movie where later on, the two males are woken up in a dark room and have to figure things out to get out of there. And this one is by Luis Cabara, and he really hasn't done too much, with only one other feature after this and a couple of shorts. But it's kind of weird because all of his other works are based in Spain, and this one is a Spanish director, funded and shot in Germany, yet acted in English. So I guess it's a bit of an international effort all around. And this is weird. In the IMDb trivia, it's noted that the filmmakers only had 12 hours each day to shoot. Like, oh no, what an extremely rushed schedule. You only have half of the entire day, 4 hours longer than a regular workday, and the standard number of hours on a regular film set. How did you accomplish this? And also, I guess everywhere else this was released as Condemned, but in the US it was changed to Steel Trap to avoid confusion with the Stone Cold Steve Austin action flick. And there's less Saw influence here than normal, but there's still a group of dicks forced to play a game while traps are sprung on them. So it clearly deserves to be on here. Number 5. Saw rips are still coming even today, since in 2022 we had Death Count. And I don't think that this is going to come as a surprise, but this movie starts with a bunch of people waking up in an abandoned area, chained to the wall, and a man appears on the screen to tell them that they have to make sacrifices in order to survive and have to play a game. One of the contestants is Robert Lasardo, but they must have only had enough to afford him for one day, since he's the first one killed. Like, his head exploded from a bomb in his neck, which they all have. But don't worry, because Michael Madsen is on the case, and Madsen may be in competition with Eric Roberts at this point to show up in as many low-budget flicks as possible. The people are then forced to essentially torture themselves while being live-streamed, and viewers vote on whether they win or not.
Films like Saw and Hostel have now led the way to a website capitalizing on this brand of quote-unquote entertainment.
Yeah, I agree. And they thought so too, so much that, yep, the bad guy there, known as the Warren, well, under that mask is Costas Mandylor, Hoffman himself from Saw, so you know that that was intentional. So if the players get the least amount of likes, they get gassed and killed. And there's some interesting behind-the-scenes stuff on this movie, since it was mostly shot in one location and one room, and they went the cube route. And every time that you see each of the players in their own cells, it's the same cell. They shot each person separately, some as long as months apart from each other, and then just move things around to make it look slightly different. All in all, it really does feel like someone making their own like Saw fan film in a way. And I suppose if that's what you're looking for, then this is it. But this is like the sort of like the ordered from Wish version of it. Number 4. All right, let's see a little more self-aware ripoff, although I'm assuming some of these others are also very self-aware of what they are. But this one is from 2017 and goes one step further, and it's just called Slaw. And if you look at the box art, they're going for a direct parody kind of thing. This begins the expected way with a bunch of people kidnapped and chained up, and their torturers are a pair of brothers, and one is a clown and the other is a little person. And oh boy, when I said that this was a parody, I didn't mention that it's meant to be a comedy. But is it? It's like 5 minutes in, and about 60% of the jokes seem to be racially oriented, but not like funny things that are like commentary on it, but like the same borderline racist things that we've heard for decades. Like, won't it be funny if we have a white guy that thinks he's black and all of his dialogue is delivered like a white guy who only knows how black people talk through his hilarious racist uncle's impression of them? And then we repeat that joke over and over again. And I guess the theme here is that the brothers really like food and going out to eat, and their chosen victims are people that ruin their dining experiences. Meanwhile, when their jokes aren't coming at the expense of either black people or gay people, the level of comedy pretty much equals having the two cop main characters named Hooch and Turner. Get it? It's like Turner and Hooch, but reversed. Get it? There's cameos from some wrestlers, and there's no jokes. They're just there to be there. And I know that I've said this before, I'm gonna say it again. You've seen me on this channel sitting through some of the most backyard bargain basement flicks that are out there, and I can get through every one of them. But the thing that I can't stomach is a comedy that tries so damn hard to be funny. It doesn't even come close to getting a laugh, because it's like every single joke they know is from a book that they brought called Classic Old-Timey Jokes that we maybe found funny in the 60s. And outside of that, they were just like, let's just be offensive. Isn't that funny? We don't have to make jokes. We just have to say stereotypes. And if you say that it's not funny, then we can just say that people are too easily offended and blame them instead of the fact that they're not freaking jokes. I also don't know if you know this, but I have a rule for movies that I watch for the channel, and that's that I don't tap out. I have to watch the whole thing. That rule has never been tested as much as this movie. This is potato salad, don't ask levels of hurt to watch, and it's possibly one of the worst things that I have sat through in the history of movie timelines. Number 3. Our next entry is from 2008 and from across the ocean, because we're looking at Korea's Death Bell. It gives us a group of high school kids on the day of their big test, but there's something unusual going on, including apparent ghosts. And one of the students goes mad, warning that everyone is going to die, and then suddenly there's something in the school, killing the hall monitors. And none of this really sounds like Saw, but then we turn the corner. In class, there's suddenly a high-pitched sound, and then a TV broadcast showing one of the students locked in a cage that's being slowly filled up with water. A voice comes over the PA and tells them that in order to save her, the class must solve the math problems on the side of the glass, and if they try to leave, then bad things will occur. When a teacher disregards that, they find him dead, and they fail to save the girl in a tank. But shortly after, another student is announced to be held and is being tortured, and they have to solve another puzzle to save him. Once again, they fail to complete the puzzle, resulting in another death, and they soon realize that the deaths are occurring in the order of their recent placement exams, and each of the puzzles contains a clue. And yeah, this is essentially a combination of Saw meets Battle Royale, and when I say that, understand that I mean that this is exactly Saw meets Battle Royale. It's the class of students forced to survive based on their performance, mixed with death traps that involve puzzles to solve in order to live through them. And it's from Hong Sung-yoon, a music video director. And this was his jump into the world of features. And at the time, he was using the pseudonym of Chang.
It's time to Chang.
No, not that one. It was hugely successful, becoming one of the biggest box office hits in Korean horror history, and even earned a sequel called Death Bell 2 Bloody Camp, although that one was unconnected, except for the title. Number 2. Get ready for a sentence that I don't think you've ever heard before. We're going to check out Christian Saw. Yep, it's the Reconciler from 2015, which, stop me if you've heard this one before, starts with a couple of people waking up in an abandoned warehouse with no idea how they got there, and they're locked in. But then we have a reporter whose boss is there to chew bubblegum and kick ass, but he's dead. That's not where I expected to go with that one. The duo start to try to figure out how they're connected and why they're there, and Sienna goes to church and talks about how America is becoming less moral, and it's been over the last 50 years, which is pretty hilarious considering that they're saying it was a more moral time, like pre-civil rights. I mean, I guess that they're saying it's less moral now than 50 years ago, which at the time of this video means like since 1973. So they're saying that, the drug and sex-filled 60s and 70s were way more moral than right now.
So it doesn't bother you as a Christian that kids can't pray in school anymore?
Oh, they can! I hate when people say this. Kids can pray in school whenever they want. The school itself just can't make it part of the curriculum or requirements. And yeah, this is like 20 minutes into the movie so far, and we've been with the guys locked in the room for about 3 of those, and the entirety of the rest of it is just characters sitting around mad that they can't force the rest of the world to pray anymore. And then it takes a turn when Smitty's twin brother is there as well, locked in a box, and they realize that they're the victims of the Reconciler, who kidnaps estranged family members and locks them together. We see another of his victims, and yep, he leaves a recording with information about why they're there, and yeah, this Jigsaw doesn't kill his victims or even leave them in traps. He literally just locks them together somewhere, and if they don't work out their differences, I guess they die of starvation. And I've seen enough Christian-themed horror films to know 2 things. In these worlds, literally everyone is always talking about God, like all the time. There's like not a single conversation that the subject isn't a factor in. And there's also going to be a really ill-fitting musical number. I've seen miracles just happen. And yeah, if you're looking for something Saw-like, you're not getting much here, even though they literally build this one as the Christian Saw. And here's the thing. The whole thing that this movie is saying is that there's a guy who locks people in a room and will only let them out if they reconcile their differences, which mainly have to do with their spirituality, and will only release them if they accept it. So like if they don't break through and reconcile with God, then he'll leave them to die. And the movie treats that like it's a good thing. And maybe that's a bit scary if that's the filmmaker's view on religion. Number 1. Our final film on this roster is, again, a sentence I thought would never come out of my mouth, since we're watching 2016's Sadhuram 2, otherwise known as Bwood Saw. This begins with an airplane disappearing from radar, and there's a very successful businessman, and then, yep, 2 guys wake up in a dark room chained to the wall, and there's a dead body in the middle of the room. And here's where you realize that this isn't just some Saw knockoff that's using bits and pieces of it. Nah, this is going the full remake route and reproducing it as closely as possible. There are some differences though, like their home lives being a big difference, and there being a combination lock attached to their chain. And of course, I guess to avoid too much of a similarity to Saw, they don't get saws and instead have axes. In other cases, there's just minor variations, like they do the reverse bear trap. And if you thought that the editing in the Saw movies were frantic, take a look at this. And I guess that the bad news, or I guess good news, depending upon how you feel about it, is that there aren't any musical numbers. But here's the weirder thing. This movie is called Sadhuram 2, but I can't really find any information as to why it's called that, since there doesn't appear to be a Sadhuram 1. And even weirder is that they didn't really promote this as saying, oh, hey, we're remaking Saw. But what they did promote it was saying that they were making India's first philanthropical thriller. And not really sure what that's supposed to mean, because it's literally just Saw. And it's pretty damn entertaining. And here's the thing, if you're not into Saw because it's just too violent, or not that into the whole torture porn aspect, then this is like Saw Light, because due to the country's censorship rules, it's not allowed to be gory or anything. In fact, when the Doc Gordon character cuts his foot off, it's blurred out even. So there you have it, 10 more movies that are either directly inspired from Saw, or remaking Saw, or spoofing Saw in one way or another. And this batch was, yeah, a little bit tough to get through. Not a lot of great ones in here, a couple of fun ones, but for the most part, this was a collection of difficult to get through films. But you know, I guess that's supposed to be expected with Saw inspired movies. But tell me down below in the comments which of these that you've enjoyed. Let me know other Saw ripoffs that you know of, because there's plenty of them out there. Check out my first Saw ripoff list first before you do that, see which ones were in there so we're not getting duplicates. But tell me down below in the comments which other Saw ripoffs that you know of. And let me know if you've seen Slaw and could get through it, or if you've seen the Reconciler and think its message makes sense. Also, like the video if you enjoy it, hit the subscribe button if you enjoy the channel, and go to my Patreon page at patreon.com/movietimelines, where you can help support this channel like these guys do. They are awesome, and so are you, for watching these videos, and keep on doing that. Keep coming back, as we've got another one coming very soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.